So I called this task force meeting because Jason is looking for some information. Frank gave us an update that we have 9 out of 17 replies to our well abandonment. And I think that we should discuss different strategies of getting a reply or getting the results that we need. A couple of administrative things first, because I got to look at the agenda. Let me call the meeting to order. I'm sorry. Call the meeting to order at 7:30, Jen. And I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of April 6, 2021.
Steve, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
We'll have Randy second it. Are there any comments or does everyone, just so everyone knows, Jennifer got these out a day after after the meeting. I reviewed them at that point and didn't have any comments, but does anyone have any comments of those minutes?
I don't have any comments. They look fine to me.
Okay, so all in favor of approving the minutes from April 6, 2021?
Aye. Steve, you got to count out the people.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
If it's just to make sure for the record, or a roll call,
Yep.
one of the two.
So yeah, I should do a roll call also. So we attending are Frank Chan, James Burge, Randy Nixon, Richard Prendergast, Rob McCarthy. I can't hear Rob. So all in favor of approving the minutes are Frank Chan, James Burge, Randy Nixon, Richard Prendergast, and Rob. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I approve also.
Okay, so minutes from April 6th are approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda is business, and this is basically why we called the meeting. It's to discuss strategy to assist residents in well abandonment. And I think I'd like Jason to talk about this a while, to give us I'm sorry. Their needs and their concerns on this issue.
Sure.
So Jason, do you want to give us an update?
Sure. Yep. Thanks, Dave. Well, yeah, just stepping back a few months, based on some of the design work that was done on the Beach Association project, Connecticut Deep is requiring some fairly stringent well protection measurements for parcels that have a private drinking water well on their property. Overall, the project as a whole will improve the groundwater quality. So, why they're requiring, things like double wall pipe and pressure pipe for a gravity sewer, that's a little bit out of the norm. And, the impact of the project is it does drive up the cost. So yeah, we've been working over the past few months to identify which parcels have private wells. As Steve alluded to, there's been a survey sent out to the known private wells, trying to understand if they would be willing to switch over to Connecticut water, in which case then the new sewer pipe that goes by could just be a standard PVC pipe, as is typically used for gravity sewers, standard manholes, no special protections, in which parcels will require, some additional measures to be done for DEEP to approve the project. So basically, yeah, depending on, the number of people that are planning to maintain their private wells and where they are in relation to the new sewer pipe, that'll impact the cost of the project. So we're trying to get a handle on, where those are and how many there are.
So, Frank, could you give us an update on who's responded, where their wells are? I mean, did we send out? So I have a couple questions that maybe you can answer in this. So, did we send out letters to residents that have to abandon their wells, saying you have to abandon your well and it doesn't matter? Did we require a response to that? And then I guess my other question is, out of the 9 out of 17 responses, what were the responses? And I guess that's it. So could you just update us on the status of that?
Okay, well, I'll address your compound questions one item at a time. Okay. Well, there were 2 sets of mailings out. The first set was sent out to 9 addresses, which has no Connecticut water, no commercial water supply, and also has a well either 25 feet or 75 feet away from the sewer main. Of those 9, received only 3 responses. All the responses said abandoned well and connect to commercial water supply. There were 5 no replies. 1 was returned to sender, basically a bad address. And the second round, I identify 7 addresses that has either seasonal Connecticut water or year-round water or inactive. They all have some kind of commercial water piping coming in. Of the 8 addresses, receive 4 responses, and 3 of them said abandon. 1 asked the questions about whether he has to abandon. I replied that yes, you do, because both of your wells are within 25 feet. And there were 4 no replies. All of the letters that sent out requires a requested and an answer within the month of the date of the letter. So my recommendation is to send out another one. This is the last time. On the ones that return to sender, we may try to figure out there's an alternate address. Now, all of these letters actually, well, aside from 2 of them, all the letters went to outside our line.
Yeah, that's expected.
Yeah. So I work with Jennifer to figure out whether we can try another means of contacting folks who have not replied. I do have the addresses of the ones. I'm not sure we want to read them out right here, but you have the list, Steve. So
Yep.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Has there anyone that says I refuse to abandon my well?
No.
So we've got some that said yes and some haven't replied.
Yeah, that's correct.
And the list
So-
isn't that long.
It's 17.
There's eight people that haven't responded.
Mhm.
Or
So
7 that haven't responded, 1 that sent back, right? We have 8 affirmative, correct?
8. Well, we have
8 affirmative to abandon well.
we have 8 affirmative and 1 that was returned to sender, and 1 So basically, we have 9 that had no reply.
9 that are no reply.
Yeah.
Out of the 17 that we need. All right,
Yeah.
so let's talk about strategy.
Mm-hmm.
A strategy, different, same, to force the issue to reply. I mean, really, we
Well-
would, I would prefer a reply, but there are other ways of going about this that people may not like, but if we can't get a reply, we can't proceed.
No,
And
that's not
so-
true. That's, I don't know if that's true, Steve. But I like where you're going, so, we send out another reply and you know what? They're not that many names. We maybe try and look up and call these people. An active phone call that might work.
Yeah,
The less than 25 feet. We hand that
It
off
has
to
to.
the deep and say, we tried. So we're still putting the sewer in.
no,
So
no,
the
less than
Department of-
25 feet. Rich, less than 25 feet, they have to abandon.
And they haven't
no
replied
choice.
yet. And our role is to go to the deep and say, we tried. So now it's up to the Department of Health to invalidate their well. Or to relieve us from this requirement, one of the two. The deep didn't say we have to do this. They said we have to make every effort.
I understand, but the deep will force people under 25 feet to abandon their well.
It's
That's-
actually the Department of Health that's
Well, the
making this
Department of Health.
requirement.
That's not a question. That's going to happen. They're not going to make us, whether it's sleeved or not, doesn't matter to them. It's within 25 feet of the structure, so they're going to force
Right,
that
and
issue.
we could call that one person.
But I don't think we sent letters to those people, have we, Frank?
Oh yeah. You're on mute, Frank.
Frank, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, all the letters went out on registered mail. Actually, cost a bundle to send it. I mean,
I know. I thought we sent them to 25 to 75.
mhm.
Did we send them to 25 feet and lower?
Yeah. That's why there are two rounds.
Okay, so 25 feet and lower, we receive 4. So, but the 20, I'm not really, I mean, it would be nice and tidy if we had replies from everyone 25 feet and under saying they're going to abandon their well. But I don't think they have a choice in this matter. I think they're going to have to abandon their well, regardless of whether we sleeved it or not. So I'm not
just-
all that concerned.
Just to clarify though, we are not the ones forcing the well abandonment. The Department of Health is, and the Department of Health is saying Ledgelight is, and Ledgelight is saying we're not going to do that. So when they come and say,
No.
no, when they, well,
there's-
let me finish. When they come and
state
say that
statute.
you can't submit your plans and all that, we can, and the DEEP actually has authority to overrule the Department of Health. So the DEEP will say to the Department of Health, you want this requirement, they've made a good effort. You have to do your job on that one customer who, for whatever reason, hopefully the person just doesn't understand.
Well, it's state statute. 25 feet and less is state statute that they have
But
to
we're not
abandon the
enforcing
well.
it. We are not the enforcer.
Well, we don't
in this
enforce
case.
state law. The state enforces state law, Rich.
Yeah. So we
but it's-
demonstrate that we've effort of 1, 2, and 3 rounds, and in the 4th round, and then we tried calling them. That's our submittal saying we tried everything.
Of course, that's absolutely correct. I'm just saying, as a practical matter, no one is counting those 25 and under because state statute says they have to abandon. So there's no reason for us to ever double sleeve that area because they can't keep the well according to state statute.
Yep, agreed.
It's the 25 to 75 feet that is problematic for us as a WPCA. Over 75 feet, it doesn't matter because they're out of the restriction zone. Is that, Jason, am I misinterpreting or is that sum it up relatively correct?
Right, that's correct. Yeah, over 75 feet, it doesn't add any cost to the project, and there's really no impact. And yeah, like you said, under 25 feet, it's going to be it's going to be a forced issue. It's between 25 and 75 that if they chose to connect to Connecticut water, that would potentially change the design back to a more standard layout.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So how do we get, so now that we have positive replies, Frank, do you think it would be a letter saying, we still has to be registered, we still have to have requirements of responding, but should we put in there that, why don't you join your neighbors in reducing the cost of this project by abandoning your well and having us pay? I mean, how do we go about incentivizing people as people and neighbors to reduce the cost of this project?
Well, I mean, well, that's counting on altruism on somebody. Now, on the other hand, you can make it, well, we gave the carrot already. We're going to hook them up for free to Connecticut water. Okay, that's the carrot. And the stick is that if you don't want to do that, we'll add a surcharge to your final cost. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I think we have to make one more round of effort to try to contact them, or maybe it was junk mail. I mean, registered mail usually should not be considered as junk mail, but sometimes you get a pile of mail, you just throw them in the trash, right? So it's possible.
Randy,
Yeah,
you
but,
had,
but four
some,
letters, I mean, 4 letters, I mean,
No,
it's
no.
possible someone could miss that, but I mean, it shows a good faith effort more than minimum.
sure. Randy, did you have something to add to this?
I was just gonna say, we've written to these people twice and we still have what, 8 that haven't responded? Is that correct?
That's
I
correct.
mean, why don't we just phone them? Why don't we just call them? Make the effort to call them and basically say, look, we're trying to be, stand up about this. We're trying to be appropriate about this, but the state law requires that you abandon this well. And you either agree to it with the WPCA and we inform the state as such, or the state's going to make you do it, which is going to end up costing you more money. So why don't we take a shot? I mean, it's 8 phone calls. Maybe it takes 2 times to get somebody, but I don't know, but do we have sufficient contact information to do that? Do we have phone numbers?
I think Jennifer would know that more than I, but most likely we do. And most likely we could get that information from different sources if it's not even with the town. Jen?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to clarify, when Frank says 2 rounds were sent out, that was not 2 letters to each person. It was one set of people on the second set. So each person's only received 1 letter.
Okay.
It didn't require signature, so we could do that for another round of letters to require signature. I have the tracking numbers of all the letters that we sent, but we didn't require signature upon receipt. And as far as
Okay.
phone numbers, we got the information from the assessor's database, which is most accurate. That phone numbers are not included in that. But as you said, there's other ways we can try and track those phone numbers down.
Well, thank you for that correction, and I stand corrected on that. I thought that's what I heard. So
It's a little confusing with the 2 rounds.
yeah, no, that's fine. Well, we can write another letter and say the same thing I just said a moment ago, and see if we get a response. But that takes time, right?
So
How much
let's maybe we should go about this. How many letters are we going to limit ourselves from sending? Because I have an idea. I mean, there's 2 ways of doing this. One is a positive way, one is a negative way. If you don't respond, we are going to assume that you agree to have your well abandoned and be hooked up to Connecticut water. I don't really like that way of doing it. But sometimes
I don't think
Well,
you can
so-
do that in this case. I think you need
Well,
an
I don't-
affirmative saying
I
they're
don't
gonna
know.
abandon it. I think it's more
I
like
have-
if they
I
don't
have-
respond, they would say, we assume that you are refusing to abandon your well.
Well,
that one
if it's
person-
a signed, if it's a registered letter and it's signed by the person, we have affirmative proof that they've received the letter. If they don't want to read it or don't want to respond, I mean, we're trying to plan a multi-million-dollar project and we're waiting on responses from 8 people. Now, that would be a last resort. I don't favor that. I do not favor that method. I have 3 kids. We ask them to do stuff nicely 5 or 6 times and nothing gets done. The minute you yell at them, all of a sudden I'll do it because they know it's now a priority. I don't know how to get the 8 people to respond to us. That's what we're trying to discuss here. That's an option. I don't like the option. I'm just saying it's one of several, but we should limit how many letters we send out.
So-
and I do think really, Randy, Rich, your ideas of calling these people is probably, what I would do is send out it or in the process of sending out another letter, call all the people, say, we're sending you a letter that requires your signature one way or the other. And, if you decide to abandon it, it's going to save hundreds of thousands of dollars to you and your neighbors. And if not, then you're going to have to bear the cost of explain it to them. And then at least they're waiting for the letter. I mean, I think a combination of things is probably better than just sending out a letter and hoping for a response time after time. So a phone call obviously is great. I don't think we can use a phone call as affirmative or non-affirmative.
No,
proof.
the
I still
phone
think
call
we
is
need-
to get them to highlight that they have to do something. I agree that a phone call might have a person and answer their questions and get them to respond. I was talking to an elderly gentleman in Old Lyme Shores, and his response is, I'm not responding. Now, we're not handling that well abandonment letter, but his response is, I'm not responding. That way I won't have to do it. And I told him, that's not how it's going to work. If you don't respond, in that case, they're just going to go ahead and sleeve it and bill you.
Right.
So he understood that. Then he's like, oh, okay, I don't believe you, and I'm gonna go talk to other people. And then he came back and said, okay, you're right.
Right. So, but as a group, number one, I'd like to limit how much correspondence. We can't just keep. All right, we'll send out another. So how many pieces of correspondence do you think we should send out to individuals?
How many did we send out already?
No, we
Well,
sent
we've
out
only had one round.
one.
So
We
now-
only send out one letter.
Yeah,
And one person hasn't received anything apparently.
no. Yeah, there were 17 total. So we have to send out 9 letters in the second set of persuasion.
Right. And one person hasn't really received any correspondence.
Who's that?
I think you send out another round of letters to those that have not responded, and we call them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Frank, is that correct? One person really hasn't received any correspondence
I mean, where did you
because
get
it was
that?
returned.
Oh, I was returned. Yeah, I was.
Right? So
yeah.
one person doesn't even know they're required to respond. So that's one thing that we'll ask Jennifer to look into to see if we can find another way of contact.
The assessor gave me an alternate address because that person has more than one property. So
Okay.
I looked it up by address, but she looked it up by name and found another address. So we'll pursue
Okay.
that.
Okay.
So the other thing we can do is send it to both addresses, the one in Old Lyme and the one in which they probably have their primary residence. Because we know they own the house in Old Lyme. So if they're getting mail there, whether it's a renter or whomever, they're probably not throwing it out. They're probably Supporting it. I don't know, but that may be another,
Some beach houses don't get mail from Town of Old Lyme's post office. I know mine won't. No matter what I do. So
oh,
they just refuse to deliver it.
Steve, I agree with the second mailing, but maybe in the mailing, if I heard it right earlier, that the folks that are between 25 and 75, if they connect to Connecticut Water, we were gonna pay the cost of that.
correct.
I mean, you could add that into the letter to entice them, hopefully, and then follow it up with a phone call.
Hey, Jim, that's already in the original letter.
Okay,
To cover everybody under 75 feet.
I didn't recall, yeah.
So how many letters that are received do you think is reasonable to say, that's it? You know, we've tried, is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 3? Is
Let's
it,
say two.
Two.
Yeah. Well,
Two
I
and a
think that-
phone call, two and a phone call should be
Wow.
more than adequate. In my opinion.
proponents of tough love, I guess.
You get a registered letter, it's like you think you got money or you got something wrong. So I mean, either way, you're opening it.
Right.
For the most
That's
part.
weird. I've never thought I got. I never thought
I'm
I
still
got
waiting to get money, but you
a
know,
registered letter.
Yeah.
that's what lawyers send. They send, oh, by the way, your great uncle passed away. Or,
All right, so could I have a motion that caps could I have a motion to recommend to the full board that we cap the correspondence, registered correspondence at 2 pieces of mail?
I'll make that motion. Randy will.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
we have to have a discussion.
Oh, discussion?
Don't we want to say 2 pieces plus phone call?
Well, I said 2 pieces of registered mail. It doesn't negate a phone call at all. I would go so far as to try to hound these people as much as possible if we don't receive the second one back with a phone call, 2 phone calls, 3 phone calls, you know.
It's, you know,
Do we need to
I
get
think-
it on the record or?
well, if we agree to that, we want to change this, I would officially ask Randy if you'd amend his motion to say 2 pieces in a phone call. But
Does that limit it to 1 phone call?
Send 2 pieces of correspondence to, you know, make these people aware of the need to abandon their wells and to follow that up with a personal phone call.
And that's registered mail.
Correct.
so you made an amendment. Someone needs to second it.
I'll second that.
Open for discussion.
I agree with the motion. I wouldn't limit it to 1 phone call. But, you know, then you run down the same thing again, is how many phone calls would you make?
You would have to, if you're asking Randy to amend the motion again, you have to ask him to use those words. Or if you're just
No.
discussing, you know,
No, I think that, you know, you run the same risk as anything else. If you don't put a limit on something, then what is the limit? So this one is 1 phone call. I'm fine with that. I mean, they're either going to reply or they're not. In the long run, you're not going to be able to force them to do something they don't want to do. All we can do is inform them. So I'm good with that. Anyone else? Okay. All in favor of Randy's motion?
I,
Right?
Aye.
Let's say it carries unanimously. Rob McCarthy, said aye, and everyone else did. Okay, so following on the same concept, what do you think should be the deadline of the reply?
That should be 1 month from the date of the letter.
And Frank, how long do you think it would take, and maybe with Jennifer's consult, how long do you think it would take to get the second mailing out? Could we get it out by the 15th, a week from today?
The letter has to be written, it has to be, are we sending out the exact same letter as before? With the
No. Yeah, what I propose is that I draft a cover letter spelling out the carrot and the stick.
Will you include that all the residents that have responded so far are going to abandon their well? It adds a little peer pressure to those that are trying to decide,
Well,
if you're
I would say many of them.
in a group of people and everyone is going one way, there's some peer pressure not to buck that way. Especially when they know that they're gonna cost the project more money. Yes,
I would just suggest that we indicate either in the subject line or in the text of the letter that this is the second letter, so that that's on the record.
Second and last.
Yeah, second and final. Yeah.
Final notice. Yeah,
So-
what I would do, Steve, is I draft a cover letter, just summarizing what we discussed and the cost and benefit of action,
Okay.
of your action or inaction, and then enclose the original package for them to respond.
Jason, what do you think the drop dead date for Woodward and Curran is?
Once we got the final responses, we'd probably need, maybe a month and a half, 2 months to finalize the drawings. I know before we had talked about, the paving out on the state road as driving the schedule, but given some of the other developments since then, maybe I'm not sure what the latest on that is. But
What is your, is the end of October to get final results of replies good? Do you need it sooner? Do you need it by mid-October?
yeah, I think end of October is reasonable. Yeah.
All right. So Frank, could you commit to having a letter drawn up and sent out by the end of September?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll get one ready for the design team's review. So.
All right, and we'll do that by email. And
just ask Rich, what's the legal process for that?
What particular part of the legal
the
process?
letter, I don't think there is
Just
a legal
I
process.
draft a cover letter for the second mailing. What is the process? Do we have to do it at the at next week's meeting?
We present this case to next week's WPCA as a recommendation,
Okay, all right.
and
But
so
not
you
the,
can
not
work on it.
necessarily, not necessarily the letter though.
No, you could present the idea to the WPCA, and then
Mhm.
Frank is gonna give him the authority to write a cover letter.
Okay. All right.
So I have a draft ready and by probably tomorrow or Friday. Because the reason there were two separate mailings was because the conditions are a little bit different between the two sets. That's why there were two mailings, and the response sheets are also different. So we have to make sure we get the right package to the right set of conditions.
All right, so that sounds like a plan. So by the end of October, we'll know one way or the other, who's going to abandon, who didn't reply, which will then go, I guess, to a report to, the health department, Rich? Is that where that would go to, or the DEP?
We would present our case as part of our application that this item, they'll ask what's the status of this item. I don't know how it goes in the application, but we'll give them the status update. And
Okay.
what could possibly happen is the worst case scenario is that we have the well that's 25 feet and less, the person's refusing to do it, in which case we'll present what our efforts are and say the Department of Health either has to release that obligation or they have to act.
Right.
And that's what DEEP will tell them to do. And the other wells, we're going to sleeve everything that's not replied to. So, and that's one of the minor things that we have to do to get our application done, but it's something that could potentially hold up our application. But I don't think it holds up our funding to get the design done. So, I mean, we're trying to get some other things done that then releases the funds for the design. So then Jason can actually get paid for all the work he's done.
Right. So Jason, on that note, do you know of any letters that are written in the negative? I.e., if you don't respond, we're assuming that you're abandoning, or if you don't respond, we'll have to abandon your well? I mean,
Yeah, I agree with Rich. I think this would be, we get all the information we can. We'd finalize our plans and specifications, submit that to DEEP, because we need their permission before we can advertise out for public bid. So as part of that process, that's their opportunity to either say, okay, yes, we're going to contact the health department and, it's an enforcement action on their end, or if they had concerns about what we had done, they wouldn't give us that permission to advertise, and they'd tell us to rectify it that way.
all right, so that's our course of action. Frank's gonna get a letter. We'll try to make some phone calls, and hopefully we get a response one way or the other, really. I mean, we want a response from each person, whether it's, we want a positive response saying, yeah, we'll abandon our well, but in reality, we want a response, one way or the other. That way it's on record. Is that, we all agree on that?
We'd like it, but no response is still kind of a response. Because the state wants us to confirm that these people agree to this. That's what they want. If they don't, then it's a negative.
Correct.
If we can't get someone to respond, we have to sleeve for the over 25.
Right.
Because so later on when Jason gets his plan in and it goes through, they'll say, well, wait a minute, this property's got a well. And they'll look in their notes. This one, you don't have a response that they're abandoning their well. So they'll say, Jason, change this and sleeve it.
Right. And that's why, yes. So it's preferable to have a response one way or the other than no response at all. That way we're sure. I would hate to have a scenario where we're going to sleeve it. See, so if they don't respond and we sleeve it and then bill them, they say, I would have abandoned my well if I had known. These are always the problems that.
Sounds like that's happened to you before.
Well,
sounds like experience there, Steve.
There's people are. You have to look at everyone's perspective when dealing with people, and some people are like, well, if you told me in those terms, of course I wouldn't have done this. But to other people, it's like, well, we said if you don't abandon your well, you're gonna have to pay more. But when they get the bill, it's like, well, if you told me it's gonna be $10,000 more, I would abandon it. But it's everyone has a different perspective of what they're reading, of how you communicate. It's you know, that's why even manuals like manuals on how to start a reactor have to be so specific and so detailed as to not take into a person's assumptions or perspective when they're going through the steps, because you would find in studies that it's not what's written that causes the problems. It's the person interpreting the information that can cause more of the problems, because it's a bias. Let's say it's a bias of what they're reading, of what their knowledge base is. But regardless, we will go with that scenario. Jason, I would make a motion to move item 4 on the agenda to item 5 and 5 to 4, so that if there is no new business that Jason has, I can't think of any. You know, he's more than welcome to leave the meeting. Is there a motion to do that?
I'm trying to look. Item
We only
4.
have one piece of correspondence. It's not going to take very long. Frank, you make that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. So Jason, is there any other items that we need to discuss now to help Woodward and Curran?
Steve, you need to vote on the motion and have a discussion for you.
Well, that's true too.
Go to the new business.
All in favor of moving the items 4 and 5 to 5 and 4? Please say aye.
Aye.
I
That motion carries unanimously. I don't think there's a discussion on that.
It's we had a discussion. There was no discussion.
There's no discussion. Jason, are there any items that I'm not aware of that you're waiting for us?
No, the only thing I'd like to request is if you can just send me the addresses of people that have received letters, just so we can cross-check that against our list in our survey, just so there's no surprises. Oh, there's one that, you know, slipped through the cracks. So if you could send that to us, you know, at your convenience, we'll just, you know, double check it.
Yeah, great idea, Jason. So I'll make sure I try to go through the plans and so on, but if I miss one, then let me know.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Do you want to Frank assign people to call, or Steve? I don't know who. And I'm going to take the one from New Britain because I think I might know him.
Yeah, so that might be helpful. So Frank, could you give us the names of the people? I probably don't know any of them, but if you could submit to this task force the people that have not replied, maybe, you know, we know 3 of them, and whoever knows them should probably call them. Otherwise, I'll make the phone calls if no one has a problem. Frank can make the phone calls. Rich can. I mean, I'm sure anyone can make the phone call and say, listen, this is what's going on. You should expect a letter. It's going to ask you to abandon your well. This is why you should. You know, we just need a reply one way or the other.
Steve, you're free to share the document I sent you today with.
Okay. Okay. And I'll send that out in an email. I'll ask people to reply saying if they know someone that they want to call, if they want to make the phone calls, and then we'll go from there. But okay, that's a very good suggestion there. And we'll ask Jennifer for the phone number. That takes care, I think, of new business, and now it's just correspondence. And I just wanted to get it on the record, since at the last full WPCA meeting, there was suggestions that we were avoiding and not going over correspondence in this meeting. And as I said in the last meeting, I did
Steve?
get a late, yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if this is new business or not, but did we have something to talk about with grinder pumps, or is that under the correspondence?
That's under correspondence.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Continue on,
Business
sorry.
is closed. Correspondence. So Mary Daly sent this correspondence to me a day before our last meeting. And I didn't have time to review it to where I felt comfortable placing it into the last time we met, which was April 6th. And so I did say that we would discuss at the next meeting, and we're going to at least review it. And basically, the correspondence was to say that, you know, pump station, the on-site pump stations are not preferable. They can malfunction, they can cost money, and she was not for it. And I believe we covered those topics at length before making our recommendation to the full WPCA about our final decisions on correspondence. But I wanted to include this correspondence in this meeting to ensure that Mary's comments were addressed. I have some comments on the correspondence and subsequent understanding. What we indicated to the board is correct. A properly functioning pump station will not cost more than a couple of dollars a month to operate. That was proven out by Frank in his digestion of information, as well as Mary's statement saying that the pump was malfunctioning and that's why it costs $200 a month. The analysis of installing 7 or 8 pump stations versus adding $1 million to the project is also correct. It's cheaper to install the pump stations than it is to put our sewer line so much lower that it's going to add $1 million to the cost of the overall project. So,
Steve, just a terminology thing. You're talking about grinder pumps, right?
private, yes, the private, not the pump station, but individual private pumps. That is correct.
You're talking about grinder pumps.
Grinder pumps. Yes, I'm talking about the grinder pumps. So though Mary's correspondence was relevant prior to our recommendation, I believe that in the meeting prior to our recommendation to the board, we addressed all those. Yes, certainly a malfunctioning pump station that runs continuously is not going to cost a couple of dollars per month. But that's not what we're suggesting. We're suggesting that, number one, what we suggested to the board and which was accepted is that the electricity costs are borne by the homeowner, but the maintenance of that station is the WPCA's responsibility. So I would imagine that if it's malfunctioned and is running continuously, which I would think the homeowner would know, but maybe not if they're not there. I don't know, but it's the minute they get their first electric bill and it's so high, I would think that the WPCA would get a call saying, listen, your pump's malfunctioned, and we would have to go out and replace it and or service it or find out what the problem is. So in that regard, I believe that the position of this group to the full WPCA was correct and valid, and I don't think the concerns that Mary has outlined in her correspondence would have changed our recommendation to the full board. And I would just like to get other people's opinion on this board if that's correct, because maybe we would have to revisit it if my interpretation and analysis is incorrect.
So
Yeah, Steve, I agree with you. we're required by statute to maintain those pumps. So actually, the WPCA carry most of the risk.
I don't know if we're required by statute, but we decided that as a group to maintain those pumps, buy those pumps.
Rich,
So a lot of the objections were not valid.
Rich, actually, DEP asked me to put that in the ordinance.
I thought they did that because we decided to do that. Because a lot of places, it's not required. I mean, the homeowner owns it. And I think in Mary's case, she mentioned that she owns the cost of the pump and the maintenance of the pump.
Yeah,
But-
so either way, the WPCA carries majority of the risk.
The majority of the risk, yes. Almost all of the risk.
Yeah, I personally, we voted on that. So, I mean, the correspondence is a lot of opinion, but I don't think it's is factual, to tell you the truth. So someone's opinion, but it's not shared by the general public.
Steve, and this is Jim, in your expertise for the grinder pumps, what kind of contingency is there for like backup power? Is that borne by the homeowner for having a generator to keep that going? Or is it more feasible to say have a combined power station like an auto start generator to during the outage to provide power?
Well, that is like the whole problem with grinder pumps, Jim, is
Yeah.
that people don't want them because if they have a public water supply, they can run their water, yet their grinder pump will fill up and it won't, it won't function because it doesn't have electricity. So you can run water on a well. If you were connected to a well, it wouldn't matter. You'd only have whatever's in your bladder and that's it because you don't have power. It can't run the pump to fill the well. But as a public water supply like Connecticut water, you would have water coming into the house. So you'd be able to shower and everything, but your grinder pump won't work. That's why so many people want to be connected to gravity, because whether electricity works or not, if you have water, your water systems will function as though you had power.
Right.
You may not have hot water because eventually you'll run out of hot water and
Sure.
you don't have a furnace or a heat source. I mean, but so no, we're not going to supply a backup generator for those instances where people run out of that don't have electricity or backup electrical supply. They're going to manage their usage so as not to flood their grinder pump.
No, just curious.
That's why it's preferable to have full gravity. But they're like I said, there are financial considerations
Right.
that don't
Yeah.
warrant hooking these limited amount of people up to a gravity sewer, which is basically adding $1 million to make our gravity line so much lower.
So Steve, one thing we can have is have a mitigation plan instead of standard operating procedures. Should there be a power outage, we'll actually go out and inform people or some way of informing people of the situation so that they won't use the toilet.
Or at least limit the usage.
Yeah.
It's not going to fill it. It has a capacity. It has
It's like 70
80
gallons. 70 gallons, one bath.
Right. So if you don't
70
take a
gallons.
bath, if you don't take a bath, it's 70 flushes.
Mhm.
I mean, yes, we have lost power for long periods of time. Don't get me wrong, but it's not often. It's a workable solution. And I don't know how many of these people already have a generator that can run their house. If they hook it up and run their house, they'd be able to run their grinder pump. So we're not going to take the responsibility of ensuring that the grinder pump works. But
Hey Steve, but once we have the sewer set up, then we have an organization to run it. So one of the contingency plan for power outage, I mean,
Oh.
one of them is to get a generator down to the pump house. And the other one is,
It's already
Well,
going to have a generator.
The generators, yeah, so it's I mean, it becomes problematic because you have to hook up 8 individual houses to electricity.
well, I mean, the mitigation plan is one, and you can hook up 8 generators, or you can just tell them that your toilet is out of commission.
Exactly. I mean, it's not gonna, it won't go back. There's a check valve, so it's not gonna go backwards. But what could happen is if it fills up too much, the check valve will malfunction because now there's.
I think we're still going to have public bathrooms. I'm not sure about that. The original plan of the pump. Yeah, the pump house originally planned was to have public bathrooms, and I'm not really sure what the status is of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the status, but I'm sure that everyone desires those. I guess, yes, I mean, power does go out. I mean, I remember a couple of winters ago, I lost power for 5 days. It's not
Yeah, and that's an extreme event. I mean,
Right.
that was like last time that happened. I can't remember the last time we lost it for 5 days.
You know, so people do lose power, don't get me wrong, but it's generally a day, maybe 2 inconvenience. It's not weeks and weeks. It's not Louisiana. It's different. So yes, once we do have those installed though, Frank, we should have, you know, a plan to address and notify the residents in case of power. If you don't have an electrical backup that runs the grinder pump, you should limit your use to very little or none, because it's not going to function. You know, so you're absolutely right there, Frank. I mean, but as a WPCA, we've opted not to supply the electricity to those grinder pumps. We'll install them, we'll maintain them. The electricity, power supply is on the owner. And that was voted on and agreed to. So from what I am gathering, no one's opinion of our recommendation to the board has swayed due to further review of Mary Daly's correspondence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Correct.
Frank has already indicated. And Rob?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So there's no need to further discuss it. It's been in the record. No one's view has changed, and we don't have to do anything else. I just wanted to address the correspondence because of the comments made at the last full meeting. That's all I have. Is there any other thing that, well, and now we have public comment. And so I guess I'll ask if there's any public comment at this point. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4. I have a purple square, which may be another person. I don't know. Is there any public comment?
Hi, this is Bill Reynolds from Gorton Ave.
Yes, Bill.
Have the people that are going to be required to get a grinder pump, have they been notified?
Well, this isn't a question. This is, normally what we do is we listen to all the public comments and then we'll reply. And so I have your question and we'll either address that at the next meeting or this meeting if I can. Okay, Bill?
Okay, it was just a quick question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that is a very good question. So are there any other comments?
Hi, Drew. This is Mary Daly.
Hi, Mary.
Good evening. Hey, I'm not going to beat the subject of grinder pumps to death. I think you've already done that. I think there was a lot more that went into that, including the location of the grinder pumps, how you could feel that there's 3 houses, 2 need them, 1 in the middle doesn't. I don't know. That's beyond me. I don't think that's logical. I don't think that anybody's walked the actual area where you're targeting for the grinder pumps to determine that. But that's fine. The town's going to own it. The town will also, of course, own the liability should something happen. And that's all I want to say about that. But I do want to go backwards for a minute. What I hear is a lot of discussion about how we can force people to abandon private property, including their wells. So my question is, before you pursue doing that, sending another sort of threatening tone to a letter to homeowners and taxpayers, have you gotten permission to accept the bids that you've received up to 18.5 million? Because if you have, I haven't seen that. Or have you received new bids that bring this project back into the scope of what was approved by the referendum? And then by that, I mean 9.5, including all the other things that you've come up with now, including the grinder pumps and I forgot now, but legal fees, etc. So that's my question. Before you pursue forcing people or trying to force them to abandon their property, have you gotten approval to go forward with this project at the current estimates? Thank you.
Okay, Mary, I will respond to some of that tonight. But I want to hear all the public comment first. Frank, do you want to make a comment?
Not a public
I mean, Dennis, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah. I don't know if you guys, in La La Land down in Old Lyme read the paper, but Metropolitan District Commission in Hartford, which is the largest water management in the state, and it's a legislative management, has gotten suits filed because of backwater. Now, we just went through 11 inches of rain last week. You know that 11 inches of rain is also going to permeate the ground. The pumps, most of these houses don't have, and probably all of them don't have cellars, so it's going to sit in their front yard. I think you're being blind to the fact that failures happen. And Steve, being in the business, you know that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time when it happens. And for the cost of one generator, because you're not going to be the guy who's out there in the middle of the night trying to fix a grinder pump, it's going to be the person who the town hires to maintain the system. I think you're being rather blind to the fact that it's going to happen, and maybe you have a generator, but a lot of people don't have generators. And we went through 7 days last August with the tropical storm. We went this past week with a storm, and electricity goes out because I get notified by Eversource every time the lights flicker in Old Lyme, which is often. I think it would be more beneficial to you guys, if in fact you're going to own this thing, is to have a backup plan for a generator. And like I had mentioned way back in the beginning when you guys were talking about this stuff, having a central location for electrical power. So all they have to do is just go in there, plug in the generator, and all the houses will have power, so that they don't run the risk of having sewage. You guys don't have to live with the sewage on the front lawn. These 9 people do, and I think it's very short-sighted on you for $1,000 or $1,500 generator to do that stuff. That's my choice. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Richard, do you have public comment?
Yeah,
Please,
my other-
name and address.
11 Swan, Rich Abasi. My other concern would be most of these homes have 100 amp service. I believe these pumps right here to be installed, many of these people might have to change their service. So it might add to the confusion of getting these pumps to operate. So I know theoretically the homeowners could end up being responsible for these pumps to operate, but I'm not quite sure if they have the capacity in their 100 amp service to do that. That's my comment.
Thank you very much. I also see a Colin Yankee that joined the meeting. Do you have a public comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, this is Colin Yankee from 10 Portland. The storm that occurred last week at the end of Pond Road and Portland Avenue, where the pump station is going in, there was about 1.5 feet of water there. The town parking lot did not have water, but the lot on Miami property that is supposed to, have the pumping station was flooded. I also believe the second item is that the bathrooms were only part of the plan when the pumping station was going to be on town property in the parking lot. So that's something, it's no longer part of our plan, I believe. It's Miami. So that's all.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think
Oh, and I've got video if you want it.
Okay. So I think I've called on everyone that has attended that's not part of the meeting. I'd like to reply to a couple of comments and then I'll allow anyone else to that wants to. So as far as the flooding on that land, I'm sure that the engineers have designed that pump station to be flood proof up to a certain level. And I'm sure it's higher than 1.5 feet. The pump station is probably watertight, as well as the building will probably be higher so that it doesn't flood. It may be designed for a 50-year flood or a 100-year flood. I don't know, but I wouldn't be too concerned with flooding that occurred there. As far as the grinder pumps are sealed, so water will not infiltrate or flow over. So there's only one way out of that grinder pump station, and that's through the pipe that connects it to our sewer system. So it could be covered with 10 feet of water and it wouldn't get water inside it. Only the water coming from the house would get inside that pump station. So it still doesn't, to address your concern, Dennis, it still doesn't negate the fact that once it's filled, it has to go somewhere. It could cause a malfunction in the check valve, which could back up the house. I mean, the way to do that is to provide power to it and have it flow out. Mary, the design of where grinder pumps go is based on the elevation of the sewer line leaving the house relative to the sewer pipe being installed. If there's enough pitch between the two, then you won't get a grinder pump. If there isn't enough, or if it's negative, you will get a grinder pump. So there could be a scenario where a house on one side and another has a sewer line leaving at 1 foot below the ground, which, given its distance and pitch to the proposed sewer line, would have enough pitch to connect. Whereas if another house has a basement at least 8 feet lower than the other two homes, it wouldn't have pitch. And that's how needing a grinder pump is determined. It's not determined by location. It's determined by existing conditions and proposed conditions. Wood and Curran in no way wants to put in one more grinder pump than they have to. I mean, that I can guarantee you. So if they're calling for a grinder pump at a house, it's based on relevant information that they have, based on where the proposed sewer line is going. That's it. I mean, that's the determining factors. If the line leaving the house is too low, then it can't be done. Maybe there could be adjustments done on existing plumbing, and we could give that option to people if they want to do a study on where their line leaves their house, if they can raise it and get rid of the grinder pump. That would be their expense. We're just going off of existing conditions. And that's how we have to design our system. We can't go off of hypothetical conditions. So
Steve, hold on. I don't know if we can, that's possible, but the engineers define the elevation based on the pipe in the street, and they may not be able to elevate their house to have the bathrooms higher to make it work. I don't know. We'd have to get the engineers to agree to that. And I don't want to encourage people to say, well, I'm going to now raise my house or something.
I'm just saying that our system is being designed based on existing conditions. Those people that have grinder pumps, or that will be required to have grinder pumps, if they want to change their existing conditions, not to remove their grinder pump, that's on them. Then it's up to us to just connect the lateral to it.
Oh my God.
Jason, can you comment to see if that is possible? Someone could change their condition on the grinder pump locations?
Well, the grinders, it's all based on the topography and, the location of the house relative to the street. But, I mean, one thing I will say is, some of the grinder locations, it's also dictated by things, by utility conflicts underneath the street. In one specific case, I know there's a very large storm drain where two houses that are very adjacent, very close to each other, one can do a gravity connection, one has to do a grinder, and that's because of a buried, I believe it's a 36-inch storm drain. So there's not enough room for that house on the other side of the storm drain to go over it by gravity. And if you go under that, that then drops the entire line all the way to the pump station. So, there's a lot of things like that we took into account. But yeah, I agree with Steve's statement that, originally we were trying to do this with no grinders. That's usually the goal. So it was really on these specific locations that it was really the only solution that we saw.
Thank you. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Sorry. And I think that's, Dennis, your comments about the generators are I heard them, and I don't think it's feasible to connect 8 different locations to a central generator to run grinder pumps. The grinder pumps are wired through the home. So then we start, I don't think that's a very feasible it sounds simple, but it may not be as feasible as you would think. We don't have the grinders installed yet, and maybe that's a discussion on loss of power, on how we handle that. And I think Frank alluded to that at this meeting, that we should have a procedure written for loss of power for people that have grinder pumps. And so we'll put that down on as an agenda item at a future meeting, and we'll have a discussion on different ways that we may want to handle that. So your point is well taken. As far as Richard's comment, that's a good comment. We'll have to get with the engineers to see how much amperage these grinder pumps take. I don't think they're overly high on amperage, but that's a good comment. If you have 100 amp service going into the house, we'll be able to support the grinder pumps. So we thank you for that comment. And Colin, thank you for your observations. And I think that engineering has taken that into account. And I'd like to just circle back to Mary and say, Mary, the $18.5 million bids that you saw are not do not encompass. Some of that encompasses our portion of the $9.5 million bond that was taken for the project. But most of that is not for, that $18.5 million bid is number one, about 30% of it's shared by Old Line, if it were accepted. It's not, that bid is not for, is not a total response. It's a shared bid between all four WPCAs. So we are very comfortable that $9.5 million in bonding will accomplish all the work that Old Line WPCA is responsible for. So that's it. We have authority to continue, and we do not expect our bonding to be exceeded. And if we did, we would have to either request more or redesign. So is there any other comment, Rich, you want to?
I would say a couple things. I don't know if the grinder pump people have been notified by us, but I'm pretty sure, I know Mary requested the Freedom of Information request for the grinder pump, so I imagine she's contacted them herself. We will contact them when it's finalized and we get through the system, I'm sure, if we haven't already. I would say the townwide referendum allows the first selectman's office to engage in any contracts to make this happen up until the $9.5 million limit. So that is the permission to do this. The bids going out from the private beach associations are the private beach associations at this point. We plan on joining that later because it saves us money. We're working on and figuring out on joining that. We have an kind of like a agreement to join the cost sharing agreement, which is sharing those costs. As far as private well abandonment permission, we are not doing this. We are being told to do this by the Department of Health. We didn't have this issue. They put this issue on us when technically they were supposed to do this to to residents. It is technically, legally, in every way, their responsibility, but they put it on us. So we're willing to try to reach out to customers and try to figure something out. So we're going to do our best effort to explain the situation with residents and facilitate. I think we've gone out a pretty far way to help them understand the issue, as well as fund this these changes. So
It would be at no cost to them for the construction portion of that. That's what we're offering. abandon your well and it's no cost to you. The only cost would be the bill from Connecticut Water when they use water.
Right. And technically, they probably should be getting a bill from Connecticut Water that goes by their house, whether they use it or not. I've heard people have to pay that. Well, I know I get a bill that goes by one of my houses, and I know other people that get a bill. So there's the amount of money that you pay for having something go by your property. I guess maybe you could refuse to pay it. I guess. I don't know.
No.
So that's all that I had to say. I don't know if anyone else, Steve, back to you.
Yeah, does any other member have a comment? Andy?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right, Rob? No. All right, so seeing no other comments in noting that public comment was ended, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn.
James?
I second it.
Any seconds? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you, Jennifer.